We are back. We touched on this earlier, and it needs to be said in plain English. This is not a night to pursue just one story, and that is the New Hampshire vote. This is also not a night to do what is sometimes the norm, straight-faced reporting, quoting the president out of the White House. We digress. We continue to follow tonight the story of 4 U.S. prosecutors who, in a highly unusual move, withdrew from the government's case against longtime Donald Trump advisor Roger Stone, his friend of upwards of 4 decades. One of those prosecutors has quit his post at the Justice Department entirely. This comes after the prosecutors yesterday recommended a 7 to 9 year federal prison guideline sentence for Roger Stone based on the Justice Department guidelines for the felony charges Mr. Stone has been convicted of in federal court. Then came this, a late-night presidential tweet slamming the recommendation as a, quote, miscarriage of justice. Well, today, senior officials at the Trump Justice Department announced they would overrule the prosecutor's sentencing recommendation, apparently prompting all the prosecutors on the case to withdraw. Now, a new filing from a senior official in the Washington, D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office suggesting a sentence far less than 7 to 9 years would be appropriate for this particular felon.
Joining us now is our friend Chuck Rosenberg, former U.S. attorney and former senior FBI official. Chuck, we always like talking to you. I think tonight we need to hear from you. First of all, on the resignations of 4 prosecutors from the case and 1 prosecutor from the department, just how rare is that, and what does that suggest to you?
Yeah, I think calling it highly unusual, Nicole, understates the significance. It signals to me that there has been a political infestation of the office. At least that's the perception of these 4 prosecutors, and I'm certain of their colleagues. And that is the most dangerous thing that you can do to the Department of Justice. We work so hard to keep politics out, and we rely on senior leadership to help us do that. And so for these 4 prosecutors to step aside because the president has weighed in and the attorney general has weighed in a highly improper and unorthodox way says a ton about the office, its morale, and its lack of leadership right now.
Can we just unpack the facts of this story a little bit, Chuck Rosenberg? Sure. Because it seems that Maine DOJ had signed off on the recommendations, and then there was an intervening event, as Brian laid out, and other than Donald Trump's tweet, which took place in public, because that's how tweets are, it's unclear to me what else might have changed. Can you unpack that or contextualize that any better for me?
Yeah, and in fact, if you don't mind, Nicole, I'll start back even a little bit further.
Please.
When a defendant is convicted in federal court, in this case Roger Stone at trial, the probation officer prepares a pre-sentence report, and that includes a guidelines calculation. All federal sentencing is not dictated by, but informed by the U.S. sentencing guidelines. And that establishes a range, an advisory range for the federal judge to sentence Mr. Stone based on his conduct, based on his criminal history, based on the things he did. In this case, and this is utterly routine, the sentencing guidelines in this case called for a sentence of about 7 to 9 years. And what the prosecutors did very simply was tell the court in a memo that they had filed yesterday, we think that's appropriate. We think the guidelines are properly calculated. We think 7 to 9 years is right. Of course, judges always have the discretion to sentence above or below. They're the ultimate decider. The prosecutors simply said the guidelines are right, and we think that sentence is appropriate. So there was nothing unusual there. What was so unusual was for the Department of Justice, after its line, L-I-N-E, line career prosecutors filed that, to step in and say, nope, actually, we think it should be much less. And it seems to be tied to the president's keen interest on how things turn out for his friend Roger Stone. And Nicole, I would add that whether they did it in response to the president's tweet or despite the president's tweet, that linkage has been made in the mind's eye of the public. And that is what is so damaging here, that it's not apolitical career prosecutors making recommendations and advocating for the government at sentencing, but rather the political apparatus of the United States weighing in for the president's friend.
Claire, it's obvious that the Attorney General Barr made a change at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. The cases that are at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office include the president's two besties, Mike Flynn and Roger Stone. I mean, is it sometimes the most obvious explanation is the explanation?
Yeah, Bagman Barr stepped in and is trying to fix this to the president's liking. These are professional civil servants who take their jobs very seriously. In our country, one of the reasons we have succeeded is, unlike many other nations, we've had this bright line between the rule of law and politics. You know, our justice system hasn't always been fair to everyone. We can all talk about that. But there was a really big wall between the politics of America and the enforcement of the law in America, with some notable exemptions of corruption. Sure. But this is corruption right out in the open. This is the president saying, I'm going to step in for my friend. And keep in mind, Roger Stone had a trial. As Chuck will explain to you, if you plea deal, then you maybe cooperate. There's things that can be taken into account in federal sentencing. But if you put yourself in front of a court and say, prove I'm wrong, and the court proves that you've committed a felony and you're convicted in a trial, then the guidelines should control. And by the way, what will be really interesting here, and Chuck can certainly weigh in on this, if the judge pays any attention to what the prosecutors have said here. Does the judge, in fact, impose the sentence that the guidelines would dictate, or does he fall under the spell of the president's late-night tweet where he wants to take care of his buddy? It is outrageous. I said we have outrage fatigue. We got to get over it because this is a whole new level of scary.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.